So I wanted to take a moment today to talk about something that we don't often talk about, at least in my world, on a day like today when there is so much going on politically. We have a tendency to think of things in very black and white terms, in very definitive terms, and we believe and sort of follow the conventional understanding that politics and perhaps even business to a certain extent as well is just a purely zero-sum game. It's a game where power and winning are the only calculations that the players are considering, and that we as voters should always be weary of that and not almost believe politicians or trust politicians. I have never believed this wholly. I think that any field, be it business or politics, where the incentive structures have a significant opportunity for power and influence, there's always going to be an incentive to focus only on winning and zero-sum games. But this weekend, as I was reflecting on everything that's happening with respect to federal politics, leadership, strategy, when's the next federal election going to be, I was reminded of a book that I read a few years ago, which I love, by David Brooks, called The Second Mountain. And in this book, he talks about there being sort of two mountains that people deal with in their lives. The first mountain is all about resume virtues, so all about how things look, external success, achievements, all of the kinds of things that we would sort of traditionally mark as external success, in the sense of you made it or you won. He talks about the second mountain, which typically happens later in people's lives, that is more centered around eulogy virtues. So how will people remember you when you're gone, and what kind of a person are you? I was thinking about this in the context of how political leaders act as well. I think we sort of always believe that leaders are acting from a purely resume virtue perspective. So how will I win the next election? How will I dominate other political parties? How will I come out as the victor? How will I become the Prime Minister of Canada? And while that is a very real and unavoidable and important calculation when it comes to politics, I would invite everyone to also consider the ways in which leaders are calculating their eulogy virtues as well, especially during times where it doesn't feel as good as a leader. So when we look at how perhaps Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh or any of the other leaders may act in situations where they're not necessarily winning or sort of in the running for resume virtues in a way that they may have been in the past, I think we also have to think in terms of when the next election is going to be, and who's going to support the Liberals, and who's going to, actually come out victorious in the zero-sum game, which is the election. We have to think about the motivations that leaders have when it comes to what kind of legacy they're going to leave and what people will remember them for. And so I think as we enter session today, as we unpack the results of the by-elections, we do have to think about, from a leadership perspective, what is the legacy that each of these leaders wants to leave, whether they are victorious from a resume virtue perspective or not, or otherwise. And I think that that's something that our team is definitely going to be paying attention to in terms of, will there be an election, will there not be an election, who's going to support whom. And I just think it's important to remember that even in the most seemingly Machiavellian of pursuits, which is considered politics to a lot of people, there is still a human element to it, because these are still human actors that have emotions, desires, wants, needs. They have feelings, they have families, they most of the time do care about what people will think of them when they're gone. And so I would just say that we should be considering that human element in how we evaluate or sort of anticipate what's going to happen next in politics today and every day. So while that might not be the sort of strategic analysis that you are used to seeing right now on social media, cheers to paying more attention to the humans that make up all of these really important arenas of our public and civic life.